Science is for everybody. It's not for.
Wait, Brummy, do you think Nathan Oakley doesn't believe in the flat Earth and just does it for the money?
I used to think that, yeah. What
do you think you're right now?
That's irrelevant.
I think
he does, he does. But I think there is something consistent with how Globus acts and how he does try to get him through like he does seem to put a lot of effort into trying to talk people through this understanding and that. Like, so he does seem to do all the things that a genuine person does, but also because he makes money from it, and you could also say he's protecting his finance, his income. But I ain't really that interested. I think the arguments, they're there for people to do what they want with them, and I don't think it should be censored or prohibited. If it's not true, it's not true, is it?
Nobody's censoring Nathan.
Yeah, I never said the word, but like,
and he has no arguments.
Okay. There is no spoon.
No, there are no arguments for flat Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Name one.
I don't want to get into one.
Their main argument is that you can see too far.
Well, no, the main argument is that it appears to be flat when you look at it.
It looks flat. Yeah, it looks flat, and you can see too far.
Looks flat.
Then you can see too far.
That's what I mean. I don't want to get into a debate when I'm chilling, man.
Then you can't feel motion. Chill. I mean, they have some arguments. Ultimately, the arguments are strong enough to beat the Loeb arguments, but it's sort of it's just not fair to say they have no arguments. There are some reasons.
No, those are claims.
Gas pressure vacuum container.
They're not actually arguments. Those are just.
Well, they are.
Gas pressure vacuum container.
I mean, they're arguments too.
They're not.
Why not?
All right.
An argument is premise, conclusion, and they
okay. Well, what do you mean? How is when we walk outside and we observe the horizon, we see it appears to be completely flat, and we take that as evidence that perhaps the Earth is actually flat, since it's consistent with it being flat.
Yeah, that's called begging the question. It's not an argument.
It's an argument. It's an argument. It's an argument the same. How is it any different than when we go to space and we say we go to space, we turn around, we look, and we see that the Earth looks like a sphere, consistent with it being a sphere, so we can have evidence that it's a sphere. It's the same thing.
No, that's a prediction.
I don't see the difference. What do you mean this prediction? One begs to be one shape versus another shape.
Yeah, one begs the question, and the other is a prediction based on a theory.
How does one beg the question?
When your conclusion is in your premise.
But it isn't. I observe it to be flat.
Yeah,
that is evidence that it's flat.
That's the premise.
No, but that's an observation.
No, that's a premise.
No, it's not. It's an observation. It's a flat observation. I walked outside. I'm going to observe the shape of the planet. Oh, look, I see a horizon that's flat. That's a piece of evidence that it is flat.
Yeah, that's begging the question.
It's not, though. Second of all, I can't beg the question if it's not a formal logical argument. And this is a simple observation, which is a piece of evidence. It's like saying, it'd be literally like saying, how many legs do dogs have? Well, I went to the kennel, and all the dogs have 4 legs. I'm going to take that as evidence they have 4 legs. Begging the question if it was proof, or if it was formal, but I'm not doing any of those things. I'm just saying it's a piece of evidence.
Yeah, the piece of evidence being that I see the horizon is flat. That leads you down the line of questioning about it. It's like, if there's would I see that the horizon is flat from as I'm able to understand my ability to perceive curve, as I am my ability to see a direct angle, as a bend, a curve, or a straight line. What would I need to be able to determine the difference?
Ultimately, it's not a great piece of evidence. It's not. It certainly isn't compelling enough to make one believe in the flat Earth. But it is a piece of evidence.
It can't be evidence. It's not demonstrable for one position over another. In fact, if the Earth is a globe, you would expect a left to right flat horizon as well. So differentiate between.
Yeah, but okay, so fair enough. This is the fundamental weakness of the evidence is that ultimately it doesn't distinguish. But you can see how it is very much like a piece of evidence. And it's certainly going to appear to be a piece of evidence to somebody who's exploring the issue early. I mean, ultimately, there's a final answer. So all the evidence in favor of the flat Earth is going to fail at some point along the way, right? But when you're gathering your evidence from one side or the other, you can see why that would go in the category of flat Earth evidence.
Of course, yeah.
And then you have all this other stuff, and then eventually you're going to figure out, like, well, no, it's actually not flat Earth evidence because of this problem that you just said.
You're still wrong, Scott.
I don't think I am, but why?
I understand where you are. I understand, but sense experience is not. You're not. It's called the myth of the given, and it's.
So if you put your hand in the fire and it burns, are you going to say my senses?
Let her finish.
So it's called the myth of the given, and it's the idea that sensory experience gives us a certain knowledge, and it doesn't.
Well, but it gives us evidence, though. I didn't say it gives us certain knowledge. I said it gives us evidence.
That's the claim that flat earthers
Brenda, you're wrong.
make.
That's
the claim that we all make, though.
No,
how can we do any science without looking at using observation? For example, when we found the Neptune, when we said, okay, Uranus's orbit is out of whack, we hypothesized that there exists another planet there. We get our telescopes, we look up, we spot Neptune. Now we have an observation. How is that any different? I mean, we're making an observation.
It's called. So saying that Neptune's orbit is out of whack is already a conclusion.
Uranus.
So you don't know that.
Uranus. It's a hypothesis. We're watching Uranus's orbit. We see it's out of whack. We hypothesize the existence of Neptune.
You don't see it's out of whack. You don't see it's out of whack.
Well, they did see it's out of whack.
No, they didn't see it's out of
whack. Let me ask Brenda a question.
No, they didn't see it.
Scott, let me ask you a question.
What are you talking about, Brenda?
Stop, man.
You don't see that it's out of whack. You measure that it's out of whack.
That's what I mean by C, Brenda. Come on.
I know that's what you.
So why are you correcting that? If you know that's what I mean by C, when I say that we're looking at Newton's equation, we're looking at the orbit of Uranus, and we're recognizing that it's wobbling. And it's wobbling in a way that we can't explain. Somebody hypothesizes the existence of Neptune. We go and get telescopes. We look and see, aha, look, Neptune. Now we have this observation. How is that any? I mean, my fundamental claim here is observations are pieces of evidence.
Yes, observations are pieces of evidence. That's not the claim that Flat Earth does. Flat Earth takes observation as a conclusion.
But when I say, if you walk out and you look at something and you see that the horizon is flat, you can call that a piece of evidence.
You don't see that the horizon is flat. Saying the horizon is flat is a conclusion.
No, it's not. It's an observation.
No, it's not. You don't observe that the horizon is flat. You don't.
Why not? Why not?
That's not what your sense data says. That's your conclusion. That's your. No, it doesn't.
Brenda, I would distinguish the two for me, because I don't understand what you're trying to make. If I go out and I see that a dog has 4 legs, is that a conclusion or an observation?
That would be a conclusion because you counted the 4.
Okay, so what's not a conclusion then?
The fact that you did it very quickly and
what's not a conclusion?
Consciously doesn't mean that it's not a conclusion.
Then what's not a conclusion in this method?
On average, dogs have fewer than 4 legs.
Okay, that's fine. Well, what's not a conclusion then? When I'm making observations, what would you classify as non-conclusion?
Sense datum. So that would be patches. That would be patches of color, shapes, lines, things like that.
Okay, so you're telling me that you think that an observation like a dog has 4 legs, or an observation like the horizon appears to be flat to me, you're saying that you think that is a conclusion because it's more than, I think it's just absurd to me, but you can call it a conclusion if you want, but it's also a piece of evidence. Because as that conclusion that I have, which is that I observed a flat horizon, I'm going to take that conclusion, or whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to use that conclusion as a piece of evidence for an argument.
That's true.
I don't know how else to state it other than how I have stated it. I
think the problem is that what you're saying doesn't really make sense. Yeah. Well, I don't think it makes sense. I don't believe you. I don't think you're right. I don't think it's a good. And you haven't convinced me in any way that even if it was an idiosyncratic idea of yours, I don't see the value of it. Like, well, where's the merit of it?
The merit is in not leaping to conclusions based on insufficient evidence. But
it doesn't. But calling something evidence isn't. All right, go ahead.
The conclusion that the Earth is flat is a conclusion. It's not.
Have you not heard how? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
We do not immediately apprehend truths about the world.
Of course, but did you not? Where in the world did you get the idea that I was saying?
That's not what
Scott said.
Scott
Hold
didn't
on,
say that.
Let me just answer for myself. I didn't say that at all. In fact, I was very careful to not say that. I said it's a piece of evidence. That is a far cry from saying I jumped to the conclusion that we are now on a flat world. In fact, I explicitly said it's a bad piece of evidence that's going to fail in any kind of scrutiny, and you're going to obviously you realize it's not a good enough piece of evidence to make you believe the Earth is flat. But so it's not that I'm jumping to the conclusion, it's that I'm recognizing this is a piece that you can put in your pocket as if I'm going to lay out all the pieces in favor of one area, all the pieces in favor of another. It ultimately is not even it's ultimately a broken piece, as Verbal points out, but you can see how reasonable people would put that in a category of, well, yeah, that's a piece of evidence. And yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to do.
Well, maybe it would help to say that there's a thing called fast thinking and slow thinking.
I know, I'm not familiar. Sure, I'm familiar with the two. Yeah, I know there's like psychologists.
So I'm talking about fast thinking, the thinking that goes on pre-linguistically in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
I think about. By the sounds of it sounds like you're thinking of how flat earthers think rather than what Scott was saying. And you wasn't really connecting to what Scott was saying, and you're too busy in the mind frame of a flat earther and what they do. Like flat earthers probably do jump to the conclusion that it's flat because it looks flat and it's a limited amount of evidence. But you wasn't really listening to what Scott was saying. That he was saying that flat earthers can take that as a piece of evidence. Yeah, maybe it's insufficient, but it is for evidence, and there's nothing wrong with that. Same way when you're looking at stars in the sky or any observations in the sky.
I think Scott's ultimate point, though, is what Brenda said is true, but also not contradictory of what Scott had said, because he, if you have an evidence and you draw a conclusion like the dogs and the four legs and all that, now that you've used counted to four, and that's the evidence, and you have a conclusion that it has four legs, you can then claim that that's now evidence for another argument. So same thing with the seeing that world is flat, like whatever process that led you to the observing that the Earth is flat, you could still claim that that's evidence now that it's your conclusion. So
I feel like the originally your point, Brenda, was that it was begging the question, and it would be begging the question if I had been doing what you said at the end there, which is saying it looks flat, therefore it is flat. That's begging the question. But if I say it looks flat,
flat earthers do.
I know, but I was making the point that it's still, even though that's incorrect, you can you can call it a piece of evidence as long as you're not doing that. And I think that's a valid thing to do, because I don't think calling it a piece of evidence is the same thing as saying therefore it is flat.
That was the problem, Brenda. You was thinking of flat earthers rather than what he was saying to you. Speak to listen to the individual and what they're saying, understand where they're coming from, rather than just thinking about what your experience of flat earthers is and responding in their sort of mind frame. Conflating.
Yeah, Brenda. Come on.
Yeah, but that was Brenda's whole point from the start.
Yeah,
kind of.
She's right.
I am obviously.
Yeah, she's right about flat earthers.
I need to think about it a bit more. I obviously need to think a bit more on how to best say what it is I want to say.
You was right. Yeah. You was right about flat earthers, but you was wrong what Scott was saying. That's all.
Yeah,
I think it's about. This is maybe just it could very well be that it's not really a matter of right or wrong, as more as a matter of articulating positions. So we can understand
talking past each other.
Yeah, I thought Brenda was going to go with no one can actually see a flat Earth.
What do you mean?
You can't.
Lost me.
You can't see flatness anywhere. And you see the horizon. Certainly, you don't see an infinite Earth, and it's I think it's still an extrapolation. You see for a certain distance, and you come to the conclusion that that's far enough to conclude the Earth is flat. But I don't see how anybody can see a flat Earth
unless you got NASA. You can't see curvature without NASA.
Well, I see you can't say flat either.
That's not true.
Whereas you can see a dog, and you can have everybody look at the dog, and you go, oh, yeah, the dog has four legs, and everybody agrees the dog has four legs, because we can see four legs. We can look at them, we can count them, we could identify them collectively and say, oh yeah, there's 1 leg, 2 leg, 3 leg, 4 legs. You're not going to get anybody to go out and say, oh, I see flatness, because I don't see flatness. If you see flatness, and I thought that's where Brenda was going, but she didn't go there.
Well, Brenda's right, because the fact is they don't. Run.
I'm trying to make a point, and I'm finding myself not being able to sufficiently make the point I want. So I just want to think about it a bit more.
I think the reason people they make the conclusions because they don't want to trust in NASA to tell them that, oh, even though you experience and you see a flat Earth, the only reason you have to believe that it's curved is because they're looking at the pictures that NASA provides.
That's not true. You can actually vertically magnify those pictures of the horizon to see the curvature. I posted it in the debate chat box. It's called vertical magnification.
And you can measure it, so it's not like we just have one thing that we're going on.
Yeah, so you don't even need to rely on us. You can see the curvature.
And nobody said it was the only reason. Not a single person ever said it was the only reason. That's something you flat earthers always have to add.
I haven't heard of vertical magnification before. What is that? I haven't heard of it before.
Stretching the picture vertically.
Just squashing it, yeah.
Oh, compression, yeah.
So you can see the vertical pixel change.
Oh, they're just going to call that CGI.
Of course they are. They're going to say it's picture alteration.
Yeah, Brummy, how have you not seen Flat Earth for like the fraud it actually is? Yeah, every aspect of it is so childish.
Okay, lovely.
I mean, now they got photos, you can put them on they're literally digital. You can look at the pixels that each color change and you can find the horizon. You can see that the pixel in the middle is higher than the pixels on the end. It's pretty easy to do. You can see they're not in alignment.
They tried to counter that with some sort of compression thing, and I'd like to say to Brenda,
that's why the evidence never matters.
I think I did hear. I heard your points. I'm sure the other people did. The first one about just not having the argument or the observation, the thing you started with Scott. I think it's weird. It's like, well, where do you draw the line on like, oh, this was a piece of work where they have a conclusion? You know what I mean? Because like the Black Swan observation, it seems that kind of seems arbitrary to me. Like where you say the work is at. I definitely like your second point about not trusting the sense. What was the fallacy or paradox or something you said? It started with a G. I wanted to ask you what was that term? A guillotine paradox or a guillotine fallacy or something?
I think this is directed to you, Brenda.
Brenda,
I am lost.
The gift of something you said?
Oh, yeah, the gift.
The myth of the given?
The myth of the given.
Myth of the given by Sellers, who is a philosopher of language, who said that one of the problems we have is that we tend to treat our immediate sensory experiences as simply certain and just given to us and serving as a certainty, right?
Right, a measure.
Yeah, and
right.
And his point was that it's not always certain, and we need to be more skeptical even of our senses.
Okay, so like to anchor back into the original, pivot with you and Scott, it was like, well, where do you draw that arbitrary line of when measurement is qualified? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm sort of like not sure on how to continue.
Okay.
So I need to figure this out a bit more.
Okay, but I did hear everything you said. I did hear it. I think.
Yeah. So I either don't understand it fully, or there's a better way of presenting it that I need to do. I need to think about it.
Okay. Well, I kind of I was surprised to hear when Scott kind of made a simple point of like that they have arguments, but weak arguments or whatever, that there was a little bit of a disagreement there.
Well, I guess there was there. I guess by saying that flat earthers don't have arguments, they do have arguments, but they're not good arguments.
Compelling.
They're not good arguments.
Right.
And they're not sufficient for you, and that's fine that you don't think they are.
No, not sufficient. Not sufficient for me. They're not sufficient for anybody.
Well, that's a lie because there's a lot of people that find it sufficient.
That's a strong
statement.
Come on, statement. Broomy. They're not.
You can't speak for me.
Sound arguments. They're not logical.
Then for you maybe.
Arguments. No.
Not
So
for me.
truth in an argument isn't up to me. If an argument is true, it's true for everybody.
All right, if it's true to you, it's true to everyone.
I'm not sure I can follow you there either.
Yeah, it's so tricky what you're saying.
Chocolate
the chocolate milkshake is good for everybody. Everybody must like chocolate milkshake.
That's not at all what he said. Not at all. The other extreme that's hard to follow too. It's like the truth is, I feel like somewhere in the middle there, because it's like it would be nice if everybody had this agreed on exactly what accounted for logic and truth and goodness, right? Like that would be.
Well, we do.
We don't all agree.
No, we
certainly don't agree. What do you mean we agree?
Actually, correct.
What do you mean we agree? Because
there is universal agreement on what a valid logical argument is.
But you know that's not true. You know that there are crazy people who are going to disagree.
Yeah, I'm asking where you drew
Not
that
talking about
arbitrary
crazy
line.
people. I'm talking about.
But sorry. Well, I guess you can't say universal and then but then be saying, "Oh, but I'm excluding these people." Because when you say universal, you're not excluding anybody. When you say we all agree, you're not excluding anybody.
It isn't up to them. It isn't up to people and opinions about whether or not something is true. It's not an opinion.
Well, but what if you're wrong about that opinion?
But I'm not, because it's not up to me either, right?
I mean, I guess you're appealing to this sort of like, I guess I don't know what to call it, like a sort of a divine and I guess I just reject that as a reasonable thing to do.
There is a truth, right? But it doesn't mean it doesn't.
No.
There is a truth, but it doesn't mean it's your truth. You're trying to say that just because the globe is that truth. That's what you're trying to describe.
There's no such thing.
The globe is not that truth.
Such thing. There's no such thing as my truth. There is no such thing.
I know, yeah, I know there isn't.
Something is either true or
I guess I disagree.
false.
No, I agree with that bit. That
in certain paradigms, but in other paradigms it won't be. Like
in all paradigms.
Well, Brandon, then let me ask you a question. What is the truth or falsity of this statement? This is a lie. Is that a true statement or is that a false statement? It doesn't really have a truth or false value. It flips back and forth.
Actually, Tarski's meta language handles the liar's paradox just fine.
But we're not talking about meta language. You said that everything is true or false.
You said the liar's paradox and Tarski's. You're familiar with Tarski's meta language?
Not familiar with it, but you know what? I've been exposed to it, but I don't remember it. But you said it, I probably remember.
Tarski's meta language is a way of handling paradoxes like the liar's paradox.
Does it make everything have a true or false value?
Yeah.
Because my point was.
What Brenda's describing is the independent variable argument that quantum horizon uses.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
I don't think that's the
case.
No,
nice guess.
It really is, though. It really is.
Nice guess.
Well, I guess it sounds like you have very strong opinions about sort of this, this framework.
I do.
I suspect that even after a long discussion, while I could probably, I understand where you're coming from. I'm certainly not the first time I've sort of met somebody who has this very strong, very solid perspective. It just strikes me as I can't ever find myself fully agreeing. There does seem to be.
That's because you're educated as a scientist, right?
And
you're
well, sort of computer scientist.
Computer science. Oh. So in computer science, are
systematic. Fine, let's go. Move on.
True and false statements, right?
Well, sort of. It depends on how you look at it. There's on or off.
You have truth tables. You have truth tables, right?
Sure. We do a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
And so, an equation evaluates to either true or false. Does it evaluate to something else?
Yeah, the equation can evaluate all kinds of things, right? Like when we do fuzzy logic, we have equations or statements that evaluate to arbitrary levels of precision between true and false. We have probabilistic statements, right?
Sure.
Huh? How do opinions?
We have probabilistic statements, so statements that are true with some probability.
Wait, so Brenda, what about people that have different opinions? Like, how do you interpret that in your paradigm? This weird paradigm of absolutes.
It's your opinion.
No, but for them, for those people with different opinions, it's true for them. So are you saying only one of them is like?
They are under the opinion. They are under the idea that their perception of what they have experienced is valid. It's not necessarily that it is true to them.
So if I like chocolate ice cream, it's true for me that I like chocolate ice cream, right? But that doesn't mean it's true for everybody, right? So it's my opinion that chocolate ice cream is delicious. But I don't have to universe. But
All those
if I say
opinions
something
don't-
like Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level, that's true for everybody.
Aren't you conflating opinions?
So chocolate ice cream can only be true to the limits of the subjectivity. You would have to concede there that it would never be able to be absolutely true across the board.
The statement "chocolate ice cream is delicious" is true to a person. Mount Everest
You
is
can you
26,000
have to limit.
Conflating opinion with truth, though, aren't you?
Well, that's
Yeah, I think
they
you are.
They are.
Kind of said everything. At
I
first.
don't think that's truly analogous because the opinion that chocolate ice cream is delicious, your opinion, that is still true for everyone.
Yeah, it has to be recognized as such. It has to be recognized as the opinion.
Brenda thinks chocolate ice cream is delicious. It's true for everyone, isn't it?
I agree.
No, I think she said that was an opinion, though. Didn't she say that was an opinion?
My opinion.
I know.
It's subjectively true about me.
Oh,
but
Jem's statement is absolutely true.
And then she said no. She said the mountain, the height of the mountain is true for everyone, but the taste of a chocolate milkshake is subjective and only opinion. I think she did separate the two.
Right.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't the point where she was going from on this. It is true to her that she likes chocolate ice cream. That's all well and good. It's true to everybody. It is true that the height of the mountain is. However, it's also true to everybody who knows that Brenda likes chocolate ice cream. That Brenda likes chocolate ice cream.
Yeah, but that's relative to me. It's relative to a subject. So, truth is objective in that it means that it's independent of any person's opinion, right? So Mount Everest is 26,000 feet above sea level is objectively true for everybody.
Got you. Okay, so what you mean to say when you say you like chocolate ice cream is Mount Everest is however many feet high Mount Everest is. The second statement would be the statement of chocolate ice cream is delicious, and those are the two you're comparing.
Yes.
She was using different examples. Yeah, that's what I was trying to clear up to the room because I think she did make it quite clear.
Yeah, so okay. So something like 2 + 2 = 4, that is an objective truth that is true in all possible worlds for all possible subjects.
True either.
Well, that's only if you're counting in base 10. If you're counting in a different base, 2 + 2 can be a different number.
If you're counting in a different base, it's still 2 and still 4. It doesn't matter.
Well,
it's like
No,
it's
that's
like
not,
the difference.
no, it's not.
It's
What
the
do you
difference
mean?
between it's the difference between measuring Mount Everest in meters or feet. It's still the same height.
But it's only because you're playing a little bit of a trick with what you mean when you say 2 + 2 = 4. The symbols don't have to be. That doesn't have to. Those symbols do not always have to be a true statement. What
They're
you
always
mean by
true.
them,
They're
you're
always
saying
true in all
the
possible
meaning underneath you're saying is true, but the
base
symbols
10.
don't have to be true, right?
2 +
I mean,
2
even
in
on
base
base 10,
10
I could just literally redo math and change my symbols around, and that would make that, in my version of math, I could have a system that would be consistent.
Arithmetic is still going to be arithmetic no matter what symbols you use.
Sure. So you don't mean the symbols 2 + 2 = 4. It has to be a true statement. You mean underlying that there's a fundamental universal physical principle about. Yeah.
The statement 2 + 2 = 4 is true in all possible worlds.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't seem like it's necessarily the case.
It
depends on what you really mean.
Can you give me an example of a world where
you use a different language.
I think so, because I think when you get away from the symbols and we're trying to look at the underlying physical realities, well, then you start having to ask yourself, well, what does it mean when the underlying physical reality are something like you have two pieces of matter and 2 pieces of antimatter, and you put them together. Do you get 4 pieces of particles? What do you get then?
No, you get 0
like,
to cancel each other out.
You get the equivalent of their mass converted into energy, so there's no net loss, of course.
But is it 2 + 2 = 4?
But that's a different equation entirely. That's similar to adding gametes.
So then if we're going to stick with the symbols, though, if we're going to say, okay, let's not go physical with it, let's not try to convert it, right? Let's stick with the symbols. But then it's just a matter of historical accident that these symbols are what they are. I mean, I can come up with I can even come up with a different system of arithmetic that is reasonable, and it will make that statement either invalid or nonsensical.
No, you can't.
Sure, I can.
No, you can't.
Use a different. Brandon, what he's saying is you can use a different language where those words can be different.
Right. So if I say it's raining, and that statement is true, the statement "it's raining" doesn't become false if somebody else says "il pleut." Il pleut being French is French for "it's raining."
I understand. I guess I'm confused by the way in which you're sort of simultaneously trying to claim the symbolic language and the underlying meaning behind the symbolic language.
No, I'm not claiming the symbolic language at all. I'm not.
Okay, so then we recognize the symbols don't mean anything, right? The symbols, it's a matter of convention, and we could just change the convention.
Yeah,
and that
symbols
would be...
are conventions. They refer to things, right?
So then, how do you connect those? So then, where it gets tricky for me is how do you know when you start talking? We're not talking about symbols at all. We're not talking about the abstract concept of two. Now we've got to think about it in terms of like actual reality. Two, what is two in reality? It becomes a more complicated question for me. Some cases it's easy. Two rocks, you know.
Well, we know what 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a theorem within a particular.
Now you can't. I don't know if you can go 2a plus 2b equals 4. I don't know if
formal
that's fair
system,
for
right? 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a theorem.
Yeah, well, it's a consistent statement, a valid and consistent statement in arithmetic.
Yes, within the piano postulates, right?
That's right. And moreover, in many ways, there's an easy way to convert that to reality, which also just sort of works out physically to be true. But is it exclusively true? That's the part where I get cold feet.
I don't know what you mean by exclusively. I mean that it's true in all possible worlds.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean that's where I get cold feet.
What do you mean by that? Like that's sort of like what does that mean? What do you mean?
I know it's kind of a weird thing to say, but it comes out to 2 plus 2 is equal to the value of two sums of 2. I don't know how to better describe that.
Yeah.
It's almost like an identity. Just because you're using different language to describe it doesn't make it untrue. The values are equivalent as long as you're putting like and like together.
Yeah. You can prove 2 plus 2 equals 4 using the piano postulates, or you can do what Russell did in Principia Mathematica. You can prove it from basic set theory, starting with just the null set, right? Jeez. You can prove it either way.
Yeah. Well, that's basically piano's postulates. They're essentially starting with,
Yeah.
So that's fine. That's the symbol. That's the formal symbolic system that we can. Once you get that ball rolling, you can get a lot of consistent, valid statements. You can prove a lot of things to be true inside that system. Outside that system, though, they hold no meaning.
Isn't it easier to use a different example completely? Like when you talk about objectively true things, to say like there's an object that exists in this place, then it's going to just be the case for no matter who thinks it's not there, and people claim it is, and it's not. It's going to be true one way or the other.
You think
that's what I was talking about was determining that it was objectively true.
2 plus 2 is only 4 in base 10. In different bases, 2 plus 2 can be.
It's still.
Yeah, it's in different languages. It means different things. Yes.
That's just converting.
No, not different languages. Like different base.
I know. I said, and in different languages, it means different things. So there's no point in saying if you change the rules of what you're talking about, then it's going to mean, of course, it's going to mean something different.
Yeah, that's just like converting from meters. Right? That's just like converting from meters to inches or something like that.
Coach, are you probing that the tree is always in the woods, basically?
Sure. But yeah, that's what I feel like the very originally we were talking about was objective true, or what's true for. There's only one truth. Determining if something was true or not.
I believe that true propositions are true. If they are analytic, they are true in all possible worlds, right? If they're synthetic, then they're empirical. Then they're only true for instance, our world.
What? What do you mean when you say all possible?
I know, it's going to be confusing. That did towards the end.
Well,
Brenda, can you be specific?
Analytic just means by definition, right? And synthetic truths are truths we derive from the world, from experience.
You just keep saying all possible worlds. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
No one's really sure what you mean by that.
It means all logically.
In what context do you mean that?
Or every walk of life, everyone's opinion, like all different sorts of people, like all walks of life. Yeah. That's what I thought she meant.
A world that is not possible would be, for instance, a world where 2 + 2 = 5. That's not a possible world.
I disagree.
There is no world.
I don't
where
know.
Well, then fine. Give me the example.
Well, I imagine a world in which 2 + 2 = 5, both physically, always. Something manifests magically. Why not? It's a magical. The physics of this world.
But you can't
the physics of this world work differently than you imagine.
No, you
and in the physics of this world, you can't combine two things with two things and get 4. You always end up with 5.
No, you can't imagine logical impossibilities. That's not something anybody can do.
That's not a logical impossibility. That's a violation of physics.
I'm not talking about physics. I'm talking about
so it's not a logical. It's not a logical possibility. Then I could take 2 substances and add 2 substances, and every time I do that in this world, whether in the real world, the physical world of this world, I get 5, and therefore I made my formal logic reflect that, so that my formal logic reflects that as well.
You're mixing things rather than adding things. Addition addition has to be formally defined also. Addition is a.
Well, you know how we have in pianos art postures. You know how we do the successor function, right? We have 1, and we just have the operation of add 1, right? Well, it's not hard to imagine a formal system where we just add another rule, which is any time that you get you're adding 1 to something that's 3, you get 5. You skip the 4. You know?
Yeah, but how do you ever
I
get
can write
2?
that out in the same way. Go ahead.
How would you ever get to 2 if you did that?
Wait, because 1 and 2 are fine. 1 and 2 work normally.
Yeah, but if you have 2 halves, you would never be able to get 2 halves and put them together.
What do you mean? Sure.
Like if you had 2 pairs of 2 halves,
you have 2 things.
Maybe I can put it this way, Scott. If I have 2 liters of water and 2 liters of alcohol, and I add them together, I get 4 liters, right?
Okay. Sure.
If I mix them together, I get less than 4 liters because the alcohol.
But that's not what I'm doing.
But so that's what I thought you were doing. So if I mix 2 liters of water and 2 liters of alcohol, the alcohol will slip in between. It fits in between the water molecules, and you'll get less than 4 liters of the mixture. You'll get less.
Yeah. I understand. I don't think that's what I'm doing though.
I'm saying that's not addition. I'm saying that's not addition.
That's fine. That's fine. That's not really what I'm doing.
Still have 4 liters of the substance. Yeah.
That's what I was saying, Scott. With the halves.
Hippity. I think Brendan might smack you on this one. I don't know.
All right. So back what I was saying with the halves. If you have
you still have 4 liters of the substance.
You have a pair of halves, Scott, and you have 2 of those pairs of halves. You put them together to make 2. Technically, you can't do that in your.
Why not? Of course you can.
By your definition, you can't do that.
No, I can. Because listen to how this works. It works just like our normal arithmetic. So if I can add 1 to any set, okay, and I get the set plus 1, except for if a set has 3 and I add 1 to it, I get 5. That's the only rule change I make. Okay, so I can add 1. I can add 1 and 1 to get 2, and 1 and 1 to get 2. But if I go 2 and 2 and to get 4, I'm gonna just skip 4. Essentially, I can make a formal system where I always write rules to skip over 4.
Yeah, but that's what I just said. Is it like you have 3 halves? So you have 3 halves, and then you add a 4th half. You don't get 2. You would get 2.5.
I'm not sure why are you doing halves instead of going forward. I'm not really paying.
That's a valid.
Yeah, but if you do it in halves, it works the same way. If you add however many things you have to just ask yourself: are you going to get to a 4? If you're going to get to a 4, you add 1 more.
Yeah, basically what Scott's saying, there could be a universe when the accumulation of 2 can lead to 5.
Yeah, right. So if you have people that have a half of pizza, you have 3 people that have pizza, and you're adding a 4th person to get a half of pizza. You're not going to end up with 2 pizzas.
What do you mean you add a 4th person to get a half a pizza? You have 3 people. Each person has a half pizza. That's 1.5 pizzas. Now, what do you mean by add a 4th person to get a half a pizza?
Like if you multiply it out, you have 4 times a half.
So you have 4 people with a half pizzas. You got 2 pizzas, okay?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But for some reason, you can't get to 4.
Why not?
You said that.
Oh yeah, you can't get to 4. Yeah, you can't get to 4. You have 2 pieces. You have 2 pizzas there, right? Yes, you can't do that. That's correct. That's what this whole system would be like.
Because Brenda, take for example the Earth. The Earth's a sphere, but in one context where the Earth is actually flat. If you're a photon traveling at the speed of light, and you had consciousness, and you could look at Earth, Earth would actually look flat to you. Any object would look flat to you. So I mean, think about that.
No.
Okay, I'm not sure how to. I'm not
How would a
how to
photon
deal with
look? Explain that.
No, what I'm saying is, if like a photon was traveling at the speed of light and it saw Earth, Earth would be flat.
Everything would be stretched flat, though.
No, but that's my point exactly. So Earth's a sphere. Earth is a sphere, but for a photon, it's flat.
That just means it observes it that way. It doesn't mean physical properties actually reflect.
Do we not?
Right?
Do we not observe it that way?
Huh?
So do we. We observe it that way.
You get a Glober to admit what they observe to be flat. He's like fucking asking them to just give up on their religion.
No, it's not flat. It's more of a thought experiment. Like if you're a photon, it's everything. Like the Earth's flat.
The data that comes into the lens will be flat. Yeah, same as like any fucking observation or any picture from the satellites. It's flat.
The way we interpret the world is not the gold standard of how things like if things were different, we would observe them in different ways. It's our
the reason you believe
interpretation of it.
Because you're taught to to see something that's not there.
Is that what I was saying?
Take what I said out of context.
Hippity, I did a little bit. There's no line there.
Yeah,
I
what's up?
Kind of spin off of it.
Hippity, why were you not jumping to just saying if you were traveling at the speed of light? I understand that you like a photon is an item that can do it, and so
photons are the only item can travel at the speed of light.
Sure, I'm just interested. I guess that's why he was using it, but for a hypothetical, I don't know why you just felt uncomfortable saying if you were traveling at the speed of light.
Well, yeah, hypothetically, if mass could travel at the speed of light, then yeah, Earth would look flat to it.
I mean, you see what I mean? He was talking about there's a photon in my eye. That was just got me thinking. It's kind of funny.
But again, this has absolutely nothing to do with the current shape of the Earth, like at all. This is completely different.
Right. The photon also doesn't experience time, so should we say that no time has passed? I mean...
Yeah, according to time dilation, photons don't experience any time.
Yeah, that's true,
I think
actually.
that's why it's a weird statement to make.
Yeah. No, I know. It's more of like just a sort of like a thought experiment to do. Where... Like, what is red? Like, we just call that red due to how our eyes perceive that portion of the EM spectrum. But if you're like if you're a mantis shrimp, you can see all these other spectrums,
Mm-hmm. Have you heard of the theory of color?
You could probably. What is like refresh?
It's like a philosophical debate on how to define experiences like color.
There are.
Is it a behavioral thing? Is it a physiologic thing? Is it something else?
There are tribes where they have shown them different colors of green, and they see colors differently than we do because they are trained from birth, to see different shades of green, and then there's a shade of blue that they can't see. But there's videos on it on the internet somewhere about that. I forget the name of the tribe. It's because in their environment they live in a jungle, so they see a lot more different shades of green than we do, right? But then they can't distinguish blue because there's or they don't see certain shades of blue because there's nothing in their world that's blue. They don't have blue things.
Well,
no, there's also there's a tribe. There's those tribes that live in like the Arctic temperatures, and they can see much more shades of white, and they can determine the weather and a bunch of other stuff from that.
Yeah, I think about 10% of women can see shades of red that most people can't detect.
But yeah, because they've been shown to
Not
have
true.
more. They've been
Yeah.
shown to have more rods and cones than normal people.
Right. It's about the relationship of the number of rods and cone.
And
some of them have
some of them actually have a fourth type. A fourth type of cone. It's called tetrachromacy, but the majority of people with the fourth cone, the cone is kind of goofy and it doesn't really perceive anything.
I thought it was actually like if you have the extra cone, if you have two genes, which can only occur in men, you end up being colorblind instead of seeing more colors.
Actually, if you have two genes and you're a female, because that's a recessive trait, that gives it, you would need both genes to be recessive to give it that to you in women, versus only one necessary in men, considering that we don't only have one X.
Yeah, that's proof. That
Why would evolution select for women to see more shades of red? That's actually pretty interesting.
Because men are inferior.
Brenda.
Yeah, Brenda, come on.
Listen, women can do anything men can do except oppress a whole gender.
No, you're supposed to say women can do anything, men can do better. Women can do anything, men can do better.
No, except
No,
oppress
that's
a whole
not it.
gender. Except oppress a whole gender for thousands of years.
Jeremy, it's women are smart and funny. Get over it, okay?
Not really.
Jeremy, your wife's boyfriend is very disappointed in you.
Oh, that's terrible.
I'm gonna take it easy on Stone for the whole week because he said something funny earlier. He said something good finally, so I'm gonna take it easy on him.
Let us know when you just had to crank that heat up.
Only took 6 months.